Where's all the other versions?
That I don't know.
I mean, what are y'all trying to like
I'm just the
destroy the evidence when it's not?
I'm not sure.
So right here it says irreversible loss. I mean, using words like that. I mean, obviously, the Gulf Coast, the ecosystem is self-generated. So why do you mean irreversible loss? So like a temporary irreversible loss?
The whole thing is if those ones are completely destroyed and they never come back. And we're still fighting to come back from the 2011 freshwater inundation.
Well, you use the word potentially, so.
Oh, Steve?
I want all the other versions as well, and just PDF the whole package to me. You need to.
Anything else?
Do you want me to look at these two real quick?
Well, that one comes after this one. And I think one is to the mass administrator. I don't think the other two are as timely, so I'll go ahead and head back and get it.
Here, hang on. Hey, you want to wait on this one? Okay.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. Thank you. You did too. You had a couple out there. I didn't have any catchable, but we were able to field them anyway. The main thing is I got out uninjured. That's. I called my wife and said, just out of practice, no injuries. Huh? Ken Buck? Did he really? Got ill like nauseous or? Really? Oh, is that what was going on at the end of the? I thought they bumped a couple cars together or something. So yeah, I was hurrying here, so I just left. No kidding. I hope he's all right.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Does he have a script?
They might have been going to the other place.
Okay. The meeting of the Subcommittee on Homeland Security is called to order. Welcome, everyone, to the markup of the fiscal year 2020 Funding Act for the Department of Homeland Security. I want to begin by thanking my minority counterpart, Ranking Member Fleischman, for his input and cooperation in putting together the bill and report before us this morning. I know that there are areas of disagreement, in some cases significant disagreements, but there are many more on which we are in close agreement. Ranking Member Fleischman, I very much appreciate your partnership and that of your excellent committee staffer, Dina Barron. I am hopeful that by the end of our process, the bill will garner broad support from both sides of the aisle. I would be remiss if I did not remark on the ongoing humanitarian crises at the southern border. There are sharp disagreements about its causes and how to address them. However, all migrants who come into our government's custody must be treated with dignity and respect. I hope we can agree that there are many factors involved and that addressing the problem will require a comprehensive and balanced approach. Members before them have copies of the draft bill and report. We have done our best to address as many of our concerns and priorities as possible, along with those of members of the full committee and the House more broadly. It hasn't been easy. The subcommittee received 3,200 member requests, including over 1,200 requests for bill or report language. The subcommittee MARC recommends $63.8 billion in total discretionary appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security, including $49.7 billion within the bill's 302B allocation and $14.1 billion as a budget cap adjustment for major disaster response and recovery activities. The overall total is an increase of $2.2 billion above the fiscal year 2019 funding level and $1.9 billion below the President's budget request. For CBP, the bill provides $242 million for innovative technology at the border and at ports of entry, and also provides $151 million for 1,846 new positions, including new mission support and operational support positions, agriculture specialists, and 1,200 new CBP officers. No funding is provided for the border wall or additional border barriers, and a provision is included prohibiting the use of any federal funds for border barrier construction other than funds explicitly appropriated by Congress for that purpose in prior years. The bill provides funding for an average daily population in ICE custody of 34,000 single adults, including an average daily population of not more than 17,000 single adults detained following arrest in the interior of the country. This is equivalent to the average daily population for interior enforcement between fiscal years 2013 and 2016. To address potential border surges, the bill would make additional funding available for ICE detention capacity, but only after certifications by the Secretary that such a surge is occurring. The bill phases out family detention by the end of 2019, while also providing $64 million above the 2019 enacted levels to continue to expand ICE's alternative to detention and family case management programs. It provides an increase of $14 million above the current year level to fund at least 2 inspections per year at ICE's over 72-hour detention facilities. The bill also establishes a new ombudsman for immigration detention, who will report directly to the Secretary on conditions in ICE and CBP detention facilities, make recommendations for improvement, and ensure that improvements are made and sustained. For the Transportation Security Administration, the bill sustains the visible intermodal prevention and response teams and the local law enforcement reimbursement program, provides $82 million to continue current TSA exit lane staffing. It also provides funding above the request for the procurement of computed tomography screening equipment. For the Coast Guard, the bill provides $894 million above the President's request, including $78 million more than the request for the maintenance of assets and infrastructure, and increased funding for recruitment and the continuation of a higher child care subsidy for Coast Guard personnel. It provides nearly $2 billion for procurement of new assets for the Coast Guard's air and sea fleets. It provides $2 billion for the new Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, an increase of $335 million above the current year and $408 million above the request. The bill rejects the administration's proposed cuts to FEMA grants and instead provides $700 million for UWASI grants, an increase of $60 million, including $50 million for nonprofit security grants. $625 million for state homeland security grants, an increase of $100 million, including $40 million for nonprofit security grants, and $750 million for firefighter equipment and hiring grants, which is an increase of $50 million. I'll end by again thanking my ranking member for his collegiality and constructive input on the drafting process for the bill and the report. It is unfortunate that the large controversial issues often overshadow the good bipartisan work that we do together to provide oversight of the department's activities and to ensure that its more than 240,000 personnel have the resources they need to successfully carry out the department's important missions. I thank the subcommittee staff, both majority and minority, for all their efforts over the last few months, particularly when considering that they got no real break after finishing up the FY2019 cycle in March. I am proud of the work we have done on this bill and report, and I urge my colleagues to support it. I now am pleased to turn to the distinguished ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to begin, first and foremost, by thanking Chairwoman Lowy for your leadership on the full committee and your participation in this bill. You represent a great part of the country, and it's always been a pleasure to work with you, ma'am. Also would like to thank Ranking Member Granger for her outstanding work with the full committee as well, and for her confidence in me. This is my first leadership position, so Ranking Member Granger, I thank you for your confidence in me and allowing me to perform this task. Before I get into my remarks, a very strong and sincere thanks to Chairwoman Roybal Allard. I want everyone to know that we have spent a lot of time together, Lucille and I, speaking on the floor, visiting. There are some bona fide differences of opinion on both sides of the dais, even between us. But the way and manner in which she has conducted her leadership of this subcommittee has been exemplary, and I thank you. We have not had a crossword, and I think it's very important as we go through these issues on this most important subcommittee that we maintain the great cordiality and respect that she has exemplified, and I sincerely thank you for that, Madam Chairman. I'd also like to thank both the majority and minority staffs. You all work tirelessly. Dina has done an outstanding job for us, but we have had meetings with the majority staff. Everything has been very forthright. I mean, our differences have been laid out. The areas where we have agreement have been laid out. And again, thank you to staff on both sides. Chairman Roybal Allard is actually correct in when she says we have broad agreement on so many areas of funding in this bill. We really do. We all hear from many of the same constituencies. We all care about the safety and security of the people in our country and the people at the department. And so much of this bill actually reflects that shared concern and priorities for investment. And I thank you for that. Unfortunately, there are places where we disagree, and those disagreements, respectfully, are vast. And in its current form, the minority cannot support this bill. I'm just going to highlight a few of the areas where we have differences. This bill does not include a single dollar for the continued border fence construction, not $1. Further, it takes money from what we provided last year. We suffered a very unfortunate government shutdown over the past year over the border fence funds. Respectfully, I do not believe it is prudent not to provide any funds in this bill when we know that this bill cannot get enacted, and maybe no bill can get enacted unless we have funds for border security. The levels of funding for ICE are also another important difference between the majority and minority positions. And the lack of funds and flexibility is another issue of great concern to the minority. ICE needs to be able to respond to the influx of people at the border, and they need to be able to follow up with detaining and transporting people back to their countries after being issued an order of removal. This bill limits beds at 34,000 and, unfortunately, ends family detention beds by the year of 2019. Both of these issues are unacceptable to the minority. Further, ICE needs to be able to send people back to their countries who are convicted of criminal acts. We have laws about asylum, but we also have laws about removal, which should and must be followed and executed with the same care and diligence. To my colleagues, we have a crisis, in my view, with a capital C at the border. It is not exaggerated. We need funds for Customs and Border Protection. We need funds for ICE. We need to address crowding at the border. We need to recognize that thousands of people are coming to our borders every single day, and we are not prepared for them, and they are not showing any signs of slowing down. We need a supplemental, and we need to follow up with funds in the regular appropriations bill. Having addressed those issues of difference, let me now turn to the fact where we have major agreements. The department is more than just CBP and ICE. We need the funds that are proposed in this bill for the agencies that are working every day of every week in our communities to keep our people safe. The great United States Coast Guard, the Cybersecurity Agency, TSA, Secret Service, FEMA, and all the components of the department. I respectfully thank the chairwoman for all she has done for the agencies under the allocation, especially where increases are proposed to address critical needs across the department. I also thank you, Madam Chair, for accommodating so many requests for reports, briefings, direction, and dollars at the request of many of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle. The minority does not have any amendments today. I look forward to next week in full committee, where I'm sure we will revisit some of these issues. Again, I thank all of you, the members of the subcommittee, the members on staff of both sides of the aisle, who have put in so many days and nights to prepare this bill. I sincerely thank both sides. Your work and efforts are truly appreciated. Madam Chairman, I yield back, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischman. Now I'd like to recognize Mrs. Lowy, the chair of the full committee, for her opening remarks.
And I'd like to congratulate Chairwoman Roybal Allard and Ranking Member Fleischman for their tireless work, and I mean tireless work, on this bill. And I also want to thank the extraordinary staff for your hard work. With this bill, House Democrats continue fighting to strengthen our national security while reflecting our American values. It provides strong investments in disaster relief and anti-terrorism grant programs while putting a check on the cruel immigration enforcement of the Trump administration. Restrictions in this bill would tighten the reins on the administration's practice of transferring funds for purposes other than those intended by Congress, including the dramatic expansion of interior immigration enforcement. Among the critical investments in the bill is $3.06 billion for FEMA grants, including $700 million for Urban Area Security Initiative grants and $625 million for state Homeland Security grants, and $625 million, mention that, for Homeland Security grants, which will help secure our at-risk areas. Within those two programs, there's a combined $90 million for grants for the security of non-profit organizations, which are increasingly at risk. The bill before us rejects the President's excessive requests for Customs and Border Protection and ICE, and instead invests in high-priority departmental mission areas, particularly the recapitalization of Coast Guard, air, and sea fleets. There is no funding for additional Border Patrol agents, checkpoints, or border barriers. Additionally, the bill rescinds $601 million from the FY19 appropriations for border barriers, equivalent to the amount the President announced he would take from the Treasury Forfeiture Fund to exceed the funding level that Congress agreed on earlier this year. Tough restrictions in the bill would rein in interior enforcement operations and phase out family detention by the end of the first quarter of fiscal year 2020. The bill makes critical investments in our national security infrastructure while curtailing inhumane policies that have threatened many of our most vulnerable. I urge support for it.
And now I'd like to turn to Mrs. Granger, the ranking member of the full committee, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank you and Ranking Member Fleischman for presenting this bill today. The funding for the Department of Homeland Security is critical to keeping our country safe, and I have very serious concerns about the path we're on. Just a few short months ago, we were convening a conference to close out the issues with the fiscal year 2019 Homeland Security bill and end an unprecedented government shutdown. It was quite clear during those negotiations that in order to get the President to sign the bill, funds would have to be included for construction along our southwest border. The final conference report, enacted in February, addressed those concerns, but unfortunately, the bill being considered today falls seriously short. This could set us up for yet another government shutdown. This bill denies funds requested for border barriers. Startingly, it breaks the conference agreement by rescinding more than $600 million. It ties the hand of the Department of Homeland Security and other agencies by restricting their ability to direct funds toward additional construction of border barriers if needed. This bill provides funds for ICE, but the agency is so constrained that they may not be able to deport criminals from our communities. These restrictions are not right, not acceptable. We have a crisis on the border, and anyone who doesn't believe that, I would be more than happy to accompany you to our southwest border and show you. Apprehensions are occurring at an alarming rate. In the first 5 months of this year, the number of apprehensions at the border has already exceeded the population of Atlanta, Georgia, the 37th largest city in the United States. As reported just yesterday by National Review and NBC News, more than 2,500 children are waiting at our border, sleeping on the ground in horrible conditions. We owe it to the American people to address these issues and not make things worse by ignoring the situation. The Congress must work with the administration to look at all of our laws, all of our policies, to come up with an effective and fair solution to the humanitarian and the security crisis at the border. We cannot starve agencies of critical resources. In closing, I want to thank the members of the subcommittee for their work. These issues are facing serious life and death matters, but as we move forward, I hope we can find solutions that address concerns on both sides of the aisle, keeping in mind those who are trying to keep us safe, the Border Patrol, and also those who are trying to come across our border in record numbers in dire straits. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I yield back.
Do any other members wish to be recognized for opening remarks? Okay. Hearing none, are there any amendments? Mr. Cuellar, the Vice Chair of the Subcommittee, is recognized for a motion.
I move that the bill be favorably reported to the full committee, Madam Chair.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. I ask unanimous. I'm not quite finished. I ask unanimous consent that staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the measure just approved. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
Can't take it.
Excellent work. Thank you.